Okay, I have to tell you this. There's a really disturbing story that came out this weekend. Do you remember back in 2010, the SEIU union thugs that were attacking people who were opposed to Obamacare? You would think that a thuggish organization like this wouldn't get a seat at the table ever again, but then you're not a corrupt union thug, so what do you know? You're also another member of this administration. Union reps are now accompanying federal government safety inspectors on site when they review labor complaints from non-union private businesses. What could possibly go wrong there? I wanted to bring in Jay Sekulow. He is a guy who has been fighting this and fighting for our rights for a long time. He's the chief counsel for the American Council of Law and Justice. Welcome, Jay. How are you?
Hi, Glenn. Great. How are you?
I grew up in a bakery that my father had, and my father didn't like the government and all the regulations and everything else as it was starting back in the 70s. But I cannot imagine my father or my grandfather, both members of the bakeries union, being comfortable with a union coming into their small business after they left the union and thinking that that was going to go well. What is the administration thinking?
Well, they basically have deputized the union to go in and act as another branch of the government. I'm the grandson of a fruit peddler from Brooklyn and the son of a retailer. But I think the reality is, what we have to look at is, why is the government unionizing or deputizing these unions? And basically, this is a political payback. The union, as you mentioned, was very supportive of the Obama campaign and the Obama administration. So now they become another branch of the government.
So what happened?
I think these businesses, by the way, should take legal action. That's the next move here.
All right. So what? I mean, they're coming in to do what?
They're part of the inspection process. So you have an occupational safety inspection, OSHA, and they come in and do their inspection of a plant and facility, and you've got a regulator, you've got an inspector, or maybe some staff, and you also have union representatives. Although the facility is not a union facility, but they're there as, quote, consultants because they've been contracted in as third-party inspectors. So the union is in a non-union shop inspecting as if they were, in fact, the United States government. Okay. And there is the real danger. I'm glad you're reporting this, Glenn, because this is a huge overreach by the Obama administration. And it's contrary to the NLRA, which is the National Labor Relations Act. It violates federal law. And the government's getting away with this because nobody's picking it up. But this is a huge overreach.
Okay, so as I saw this, again, go back to the bakery. My father was a poor, struggling baker. He didn't make a lot of money. I remember the conversations that were in hushed tones from my parents talking about, we're not going to make it. And the last thing he can do is to afford, A, unions, B, a fight with the federal government. What should people do?
Well, I think what has to happen here is some of the small business associations need to bring in action on behalf of their clients, their members, seeking an injunction so that this stops before it really gets started. Because now that it's public light, there's going to be more organizations will probably realize, hey, we've been subjected to this and probably didn't even know it at the time. But what has to happen now is this law needs to be challenged, or this policy needs to be challenged in the form of a federal lawsuit, and simply seek an injunction saying, you know what? If the government's going to come in and do an inspection, they have the lawful right to do that under certain circumstances. That's one thing. But having a union representative there in a non-union facility, that's something else, and that something else is called illegal. So an injunction would stop that process, and I think some of the small business associations need to do that immediately.
Do they really think they could win this, or do they just think we're such pacifists that we'll just roll over? What are they thinking, Jay?
You know, Glenn, this administration's policy has been overreach, get caught, apologize, pull it back kind of, but not all the way, and see if you've incrementally picked up a few yards. That's how they operate. Now, we've got a case at the Supreme Court right now that we're waiting for a decision on involving these recess appointments, except Congress wasn't in recess, and we represent the leadership in the House of Representatives on that one. We've got tomorrow, of course, the HHS cases before the Supreme Court. This is this constant overreach of the government, and they do this quasi-apologizing, and they pull back a little bit. But, you know, they never pull back enough. They always pick up a little territory, and what you've got to start doing here is making sure they don't grab an inch, because if they grab an inch, they're going to take a mile.
I know this is conspiracy thinking here, but Feinstein says that, you know, they've been listening to Congress and the intelligence community. If you're listening to them, why aren't you listening to the Supreme Court? I've always felt something was wrong with that Obamacare thing. I'm not going to ask you to comment on that. My question to you is, do you trust even the Supreme Court now? I mean...
Well, look, I'm an officer of the court, so I respect the institution. I trust the institution. That doesn't mean they always get it right. I think a lot of times they get it wrong. That's part of the process that we're engaged in. But as an officer of the court, I respect the institution. But look, I mean, the government's the government. And remember this, a lot of Supreme Court justices were government lawyers. And at the end of the day, I remember that when I'm arguing cases. But look, these are smart people, right, left, and center. And the fact of the matter is there's different views of the Constitution. You hope your side can count to 5 and get there on these critically important cases. But the court is very closely split on these major cases. And I think in the end of the day, I trust the institution. But look, Glenn, I mean, that doesn't mean the decisions are always right. And I think that they're oftentimes not, in my view. And I think in a lot of people's view, we're going to find out on a couple of big ones this term.
Okay. Thank you very much, Jay. I appreciate it.